We're going to begin this hour with breaking news in the war between Israel and Hamas, and we're going to go right to the Rafah border gate and the very moment the crossing opened for foreign nationals who have been trapped there since the Hamas attack on Israel October the 7th. Diplomatic negotiations to get that gate open have been going on for weeks, with Qatar acting to broker talks involving Egypt, Hamas, Israel, and the United States. Word of the breakthrough agreement came just a few hours ago. Reuters news agency is quoting an Egyptian security source as saying 500 people with foreign passports will be allowed to cross into Egypt. The Washington Post puts that number at 400, reporting the Hamas Border Authority released a list of names and told those people to go to the Rafah crossing in Gaza. Tom Perry is part of our CBC News team on the story. He has just come back from the Rafah border crossing, and we'll show you scenes of that in a moment. But he is live in Cairo with us this hour. So beginning with that breaking news, Tom, what is happening at the border crossing, and of course for Canadians who are waiting to get out of Gaza, the foreign nationals who are being allowed to leave today. What is the Canadian connection there? So what's happening at Rafah?
Well, you saw those images from today at Rafah, and you saw the relief on the faces of people who are finally getting out of Gaza after weeks of being trapped there. So the Rafah crossing is the main crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. It had been really sealed since October 7th, when Hamas launched that deadly attack against Israeli civilians and the Israelis started bombarding the Gaza Strip. There had been hope earlier on that and indications that some foreign passport holders might be allowed to get out, but those really came to nothing today. As you mentioned, finally, after so much diplomacy, the gates did open. Some people were given the chance to get out. Now, Palestinian officials say that these are people who were injured in the Israeli bombardment, and as you mentioned, some foreign passport holders as well. There was a list going around last night, several hundred names on it. No Canadians on that list, no Canadian passport holders on that list, and really right now no official word from the Canadian government about when Canadians will be getting out. We did see an official from the Canadian embassy here in Egypt this morning tweeting out that video that we saw of people leaving through Rafah, and saying that the Canadian embassy here in Egypt is ready to assist Canadians once they get approval to leave. And assist means to get them from Rafah to Cairo and then back home to Canada.
Tom, something we were talking about earlier this morning, phone and internet service in Gaza were out again, the second time in a week. And Paltel, which is the largest telecom company there, is saying those services are now coming back online. So I'm wondering what you're hearing on that point and what it might mean for the Canadians you mentioned there trying to get out.
Well, that lack of communication doesn't do anything but make the confusion in Gaza a whole lot worse. People just wondering what's coming next and really having no way to get information. I was trying to get in touch with a Canadian in Gaza this morning, had no luck at all. Now, interestingly, Agence France Presse spoke to a woman at Rafah who says she's Palestinian Canadian, and she was talking about not just the breakdown in communication, but telling her story about how she made it to Rafah. Again, I want to underline the Canadian embassy has said nothing officially about Canadians getting out of Gaza, but let's listen to what this Palestinian Canadian woman had to say this morning at the Rafah crossing.
We were called to come to the port to leave Gaza to Egypt by the media. I'm Canadian, as I said. The Canadian embassy called us every day nearly to make sure that we are doing fine and we're doing good. But this time they couldn't reach because of the low connection for the internet and no service for calling and receiving messages.
So you hear her there talking about how she had been getting communications from the Canadian embassy, but of course those communications were cut off when communications went down in the Gaza Strip. So it just makes a bad situation all that more confusing. Now, the Canadian embassy here has said they've been in contact, working 24 hours a day, trying to get Canadians out. Some Canadians have expressed frustration that there hasn't been enough communication, and just frustration with the fact that the border has been sealed this long. But again, seeing these images this morning of the Rafah crossing finally opening up, for now, good news for anyone on the other side who's trying to get out.
And we heard from an official, they're optimistic this could be an indication of more coming in as well, Tom. Now, we're going to show some scenes here, just to be clear to people watching our conversation, Tom. These are exclusive in that Tom Perry is the only journalist from a Canadian news outlet who has been to the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing during this siege. And Tom is back in Cairo now, but just yesterday, he and his team right there at the crossing. And these are images that his cameraman Osama has shot yesterday. So again, you see the trucks and you see the scene. Tom, now that you're back in Cairo, as we look at this, tell us more about what you saw and what you heard from the people to whom you spoke.
Well, it was a heck of a day. I mean, this was an excursion organized by the Egyptian government. They picked us up in the middle of the night on, I guess it was Monday or Tuesday night, whatever it was, yesterday. And they drove us several hours down the highway, a group of foreign journalists and local journalists, to the Rafah crossing for a speech by the Egyptian Prime Minister. Now, it was a scene of, I guess I'd call it controlled chaos at the border crossing. There was a long lineup of trucks waiting to get into Gaza. There were soldiers, there were police, there were pro-government demonstrators, pro-Palestinian demonstrators, and there were, of course, aid groups there talking about the need for aid to get in. We did hear from the Prime Minister talking about, again, this need to get more humanitarian aid, these trucks, get them into Gaza, help the people there. There was a call for peace, you know, for Hamas and for Israel to make peace. We heard that from the Prime Minister. And we heard earlier in the day from the Prime Minister talking about, I guess, this notion that's been floated of Israel potentially pushing Palestinians out of Gaza into Sinai, which is Egyptian territory, and the Prime Minister just repeating that for Egypt is just a non-starter. So we made our way back last night, made for a long day, but I think it was really quite interesting to see the situation there at Rafah, just as we're seeing so much drama happening there today.